Right. How many participants have you got today? You've got two joined already. Munir, are they all in? Or are we waiting on anybody?
Yes, it's in like Charles, like let's start. People are here.
Yeah. Everybody's in?
Yeah. Yeah, everybody's in like some are joining in up and or you can start.
Okay. Right. So good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, wherever you are in the world. My name's Charles. I'm one of the managers for 360 Medicare Personnel. With me today, partnering with this webinar is Darren Reed, who is an OMARA agent, quite a reputable and very experienced agent in Australia. Darren, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yep, thank you, everybody. Yes, well, just a bit about myself. I've been in the industry for over 25 years, based here in Albury Wodonga, which is in New South Wales, and we our firm specialises in medical migration in particular, doctors and nurses. We have a lot of clients that are some of the state's leading hospitals. We do a lot of independent visas, 189s, 190s. So very excited to be part of this webinar, and we look forward to hearing everybody's questions. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me, but as we get going through this, I'm sure we'll, if anyone has any particular questions or something they wish to know about myself, please feel free to ask me.
Yeah. Okay. Can we move on to the second slide, please, Munir? Okay. So we've got a process that we're going to follow and an agenda for this webinar. Obviously, we've done the initial introduction with regards to who we are, 360 Medicare Personnel. You know a lot about us, obviously, on social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. We are very much an aggressive recruiter of healthcare professionals for various parts of the world, primarily in Australia. We recruit nurses, doctors, and allied health professionals to all our clients based in various parts of Australia. We've also got a very strong immigration arm that supports the business in terms of deploying personnel like yourselves. Then we've also got Darren, who is our backbone for the immigration side, very much experience in this industry. Also, an OMARA licensed migration agent as well. So we're going to talk about various processes in terms of the migration, the recruitment as well, the GSM pathway in particular. And we're going to talk to you at the end of this webinar with regards to your individual requirements and questions, but we cannot answer very personal questions, just bear in mind, but generic questions, I'm sure Darren and myself can address. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Munir. Okay, over to you, Darren.
Yes, this is my area here. So let me have a bit of a go on this one for you. So I'm presuming everybody know and understands what the points tested migration program is here in Australia. So we need 65 points is the basic score that you need, and to get those points, you have a number of categories in which you will get those points. They're based on your age, your English, skilled employment experience, your education qualifications, specialist education qualification. If you've studied in Australia, there's an Australian study requirement, an English community language spots, study in regional Australia, or your partner skills or your nomination. But broadly speaking, to come down the GSM pathway, you fundamentally speaking, you put in your expression of interest or your EOI in your particular occupation, submit your test, your points, and then you go into the pool, what's known as the pool, and you stay in there for 2 years, at which times, if you don't get an invitation, you will need to submit another expression of interest. So the general points tested migration side of Australian immigration is probably one of the most popular and seen as one of the most easiest way, or some of the most obvious first way of securing your visa here in Australia. I'm not really if someone has a particular question, there will be Q&A at the end of all this to ask any particular questions that you might have. So I'll do my best just to cover, as I guess, the broadest points about any of these slides, and if we have anything technical, we can address those at the very end. But broadly speaking, the points tested migration program, the 190 or the 189 visa is probably some of the most popular visas that exist at the moment. Sponsorship is needed for the 189. No sponsorship for the 189, and some sponsorship from the state or territory for the 190 visa. Both these visas are very, very popular. The department receives a lot of applications for both of these visas. They are probably viewed as, you know, the most independent way of securing your visa here in Australia. So the 189 visa and the 190 visa, absolutely probably the most popular visas that we would have within the general skilled migration pathway. I think a little bit further on, we talk about the other types of permanent residency. I actually wrote down some of the other types of the pathways. Some of our listeners out there, they may be interested in some of the other types of visas that actually exist out there, the employer-sponsored visas or general sponsored, just generally the points tested visas or the employer sponsored visas are the two basic ways that people would secure their visa. Skilled professionals, the healthcare industry, very popular, very immigration's processing a lot of those type of applications. Medical professionals, anyone in the medical professions. Yes, great. Monica, thank you. You have a question. That's fantastic. So medical occupations, IT, engineering, trades, yeah, they're kind of the most common ones. Thank you, Monica. Someone's got to be first. Looks like it's going to be yourself. So I can see your questions. I think if you type your question, Monica, I will be able to see it. So you're welcome.
I think, Darren, shall we take the questions at the end?
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, take the question.
I think it might be better on Q&A.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep, yeah, take it at the very end, Monica. Thank you, Monica. So the skilled professionals, the medicals, anyone in the medical industry got a very good chance of securing an invitation. And the regional work incentives, the 491, yes, the regional incentive to come to Australia under the 491 program is probably viewed as another very popular way of which someone would secure their permanent residency pathway here in Australia. But in summary, absolutely, the 189 and the 190, the 491, probably the most popular visas that you're probably going to be securing in that first instance. All right, we might jump on to the next slide then. Thank you. Next slide. Thank you, great. Key benefits of the General Skilled Migration program. There are 6 key points that have been identified on this slide here. It is a permanent visa, viewed as, you know, the top of the tree. Going straight to permanent residency is everybody's first wish, I might say. Full access to Medicare, and beginning the pathway to citizenship. Citizenship, Australia has no problems with dual citizenship. It's up to the country of origin about whether or not dual citizenship is accepted. So yes, from the Australian standpoint, we're able to accept dual citizenship. France might be one. You're either French or you're not, according to the French authorities. So dual citizenship or a pathway to citizenship is something that is maybe thought as desirable as well. Access to Medicare, which is very important. Australia has a very strong Medicare program, so permanent residency gets you access to that. Family can be included. Yes, your family can be included, your wife, your children, dependent children, adult children. Parents are not included in that little scenario, so it's your immediate dependents. No employer required. Flexibility to choose your state or region. Yes, so to choose your state or your region where you want to live in, there's no issue with any of that. So you can live wherever you like. And it's a fairly free pathway from the point of view you're not locked into any employer. They are but definitely access to permanent residency, access to Medicare would be definitely viewed as one of the most favourable pathways. Excellent. So next slide. Excellent. The OMARA agent. Yes, well, that's something that we're very proud of in this office, and becoming a OMARA agent is something that is a fairly significant achievement in the Australian landscape of what is Australian immigration. There's no question about that. Having a OMARA agent gives you, the applicant, I guess, the peace of mind about the credibility, the reliability, the professional body that we answer to, being the OMARA body. It's a very, very scrutinised professional organisation. It's really your surety that whatever's happening with your application will be professionally handled, and your application will have the most significant, the best chances of success. So all applications that come through us, I personally look at every application that is submitted by our firm. So I have the last say. So if it satisfies our requirement, we will lodge the visa for the applicant. The ethical practices required: you must be a person of good character. You must do your professional development. Your registration is reviewed every year. And after 25 years, becoming an accredited specialist in the migration landscape is something that is a very complex area of law in Australia. Migration law can be changed very, very quickly and very, very swiftly. So keeping up to date with the immigration changes, the updates, our professional bodies that we belong to, Migration Institute of Australia, that really should be your surety that what's happening behind the scenes is of the highest possible standard. Yes, we do. We get updates from the department regularly, weekly, upcoming changes, upcoming possible changes. The relationship between an agent and the department is one of a very professional standing. All of our clients, your communication must always come through your agent, and it's your safeguard that whatever's happening with your application is in line with the Australian standards. We have access to some documents that the general public don't have access to. We have access to, behind the Australian immigration websites, there are layers to behind that website, and we have access to the skeleton or the framework of every visa that Australia has. And we address all the criteria before we lodge the visa. We also get notified of changes that are upcoming or pending or likely. So we work quite closely with the department on, securing the up-to-date practices of all the documents in our office. Yes, we do. We help in the appeals and the refusals. We can help in appeals process. Unfortunately, some applicants do find themselves in the position where they have had their visas refused. Australia has a very strict migration standard assessment practice. This might come as a bit of a shock to some people, but whenever anybody lodges a visa from the Australian point of view, the answer is no. The answer is no, unless they can find a reason why they can't say no. That's the fundamental principle of the backbone of the assessment of the Australian migration legal system. Just take a time to think about that for 1 second. Every time a visa is lodged, the first answer is not yes, congratulations, you've secured your visa, we want you to come, where our arms are open. The answer is no. That's quite mind-boggling. I was told this when I presented once at a seminar with the department. Their answer is no. So unless they can find a way, that they can't say no. And that's why we go to the appeals process. So that's the fundamental backbone to that. So if someone has had their visa refused, there are certain criterias, known criterias within the visa assessment program, and that might be what is challenged in the appeals process. Our firm has a very, very strong success rate with any appeals that we've ever done. In 25 years, I cannot think of one that has not been really successful. So very expensive to lodge an Australian visa as well. So you can get a lot of information from the website, from the Australian immigration system, or from the Australian website. They'll give you some of the information, but there's a lot of stuff in the background that is just not really common knowledge, I guess, or maybe seen as critical. What is time of application requirements versus time of decision requirements? Two very, very different scenarios. But yes, we do help in appeals and refusals. So that's another role of what my role is. Advise on the points, the visa types, and the document requirements. That is probably what we do day in, day out, week in, week out. Regarding points, if I can just touch on that for one moment, I think a lot of you know when you do lodge your visa, you are required to secure your points. One mistake that I see is a lot of applicants oversell their actual experience, and something that's key is that your EOI and your visa application points must marry up. That's a very important point. Immigration don't. If you had a higher points, let's argument say you had 70, which is way above what you would need, and then when it comes time for the assessment, it might be viewed that you had 65, for example. This is a problem because it's not the same as your EOI. So there's little traps along the way. There's no question about that. What visa type? A very important point. I wrote them down. There's 2, 4, 6. There's 11. There's 11 possible pathways under the skilled migration program. And that includes the employment visas as well. So for different reasons, some people might be better off having another type of a visa, for example. So aligning the correct visa type to a person is absolutely another key component as well. You may not, for example, if someone was, for example, 44, for example, and they were wanting to do permanent residency, for example, and they were doing an employment application, and they need to do 3 years with 2 years with their employer to satisfy the transitional requirement. Well, they're obviously going to be over 45 by the time that visa finishes, and they would be not eligible for their permanent residency if they went a 482 pathway. If they went a 494 pathway, they're completely fine because you must be under 45 at the commencement of the process. So that's a really good example. I've seen this case recently a couple of times in the last couple of months where an applicant has presented to me, and had they applied for their 494 visa, they would be fine because they've turned over 45 throughout the process, but because they were under 45 when they applied for that visa, they will be okay. Just another example about the correct visa type. And the document requirements, absolutely. Our record, our documents are updated. Whenever I get a communication back from the department, we update our records and our data that we seek from our clients, because, as I previously mentioned, the department has no hesitation in refusing your visa. They will refuse your visa without any question over the most trivial, what seemingly will be a very trivial matter or a very trivial document. So up to date with current document requirements is a very important part of what we do when we submit the application. I might liken it to, it was explained to me once, throwing a cupful of rice into a cup. Some of that rice may land in that cup, and that's the important stuff that immigration need to process your visa. My role is to make sure every grain lands in that cup. So that is a key difference between using someone that understands the migration program to maybe someone that's having a little bit of an attempt at trying to do it. So yes, we will advise on your points, the different visa types, and also the document presentation. And we'll verify your skill assessments and whether your qualifications, for example, will meet the Australian requirement. But absolutely, in the background, having a person looking over your documents, working with you. Is your English test up to date? Is your skill assessment okay? What's the difference between part-time work and casual work? How has that worked out? How has casual work worked out? Full-time, what evidence have you got to prove that? All those type of things, very, very important, and we're up to date with what the department considers the requirement for that for that successful application. So yeah, that's a very important role, and it's something that I think that is the 360 team, and with ourselves and everyone in our organisation, your peace of mind that whatever is submitted to the department is up to date, current, and relevant to your application. Excellent. Okay, so the next slide. Okay, the next one here. I think Charles and I will be sharing this one. The ANSCO.
Yeah, you can take the first three, I think, Darren. And
yeah, I'll take the first. I'll take the first three. Identify the right ANSCO code. ANSCO, if anyone's not familiar with what ANSCO is the code, is the acronym for what is used to identify your occupation. So a cardiologist, might have a particular ANSCO code. Doctor will have a particular ANSCO code. Nurse, general nurse, specialist nurse, etc., etc., all have particular codes. Very important. For example, if you have the scenario where you may be under a particular ANSCO code on a temporary visa, and then you go to your permanent visa and you have a promotion, you've got more skills or whatever the situation is, and suddenly you nominate a new ANSCO code, there's a problem, because different to your last ANSCO code. So your ANSCO codes actually define what your occupation is, what skill set you must have, what level of experience you must have, and is used by the department to nominate your occupation for your particular field. So that's the ANSCO code. Your English proficiency is, I would say, one of the most complex areas of migration. What is acceptable English? With your superior English, your proficient English, what English does your partner need? Your dependents, your professional organisation requires you to have a required English score. Direct entry for your 186 requires an IELTS of 6, for example. But doing your 190 and whatever else, you'll need, your IELTS of 7s.
Yeah, Darren, I think we support them on the IELTS programs as well. So we've got an IELTS training program that we offer in-house.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. So your
so we
English
support
proficiency
them.
preparation, very, very important. Yep.
Yes, we
Um,
support them with the preparation.
Yep, your skill assessment and your body mapping, yep, with APRA and etc. Absolutely, that's something that is probably the most important starting block, in this process. For any skilled migration, you will need to have your skill assessment under control, completed, before you can lodge any of your 189s or your 190s.
Yeah, we've got a documentation team that will support them on that, in terms of their skills assessment.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so moving on to the interview support, we offer a lot of support in terms of mock interviews. We've got a specialist team that supports you in terms of the interview process. We'll give you sample questions and answers, and we'll also do some interactive sessions with yourselves online through various channels. We'll also track all your applications and update you on a regular basis. Our consultants are available 24/7, 365 days of the year. You'll always have a dedicated person who'll be dealing with your case and also liaising with Darren on behalf of 360 Medicare. And we also offer a personalized migration program, a plan for you, sorry, in terms of your experience, your eligibility. We will advise you the right pathways in partnership with Darren. And the most important thing is for you to be successful in your migration application. Next slide, please.
Okay, that's this one.
Yeah.
So yes, you need a valid passport and you need at least 6 months on your passport. Yes, you need at least 6 months, and it makes sense. You need a valid passport. You need your skill assessment result. You need your English, your character, your police tick. If you've lived in whatever country you've lived in for 12 months or more is where you need your police clearance from. So whatever country you've lived in, country of birth, if you've worked in UAE or Dubai or wherever you've worked, if you've lived there for 12 months or more, you will need a police clearance from that country. Your medical, as I mentioned previously, time of application and time of decision documents do vary. So medicals and police clearances, they can be stage 2 matters. Your relationship documents, your marriage certificate, evidence that you are the spouse or the child. Something just interesting it just popped into my mind, I might remember, I mention it now while I think of it. The Australian immigration pathway, they have a policy, and it's called one fail, all fail. So what that means is you've got a husband, wife, and a couple of kids. If one person doesn't make the criteria, nobody does. So that's a very important point. So your relationship documents with your partner and your birth certificates, for example, are other key documents. Okay, next slide. Failing to meet common mistakes to avoid. Yes, there are lots of common mistakes, and I unfortunately have, after 25 years of experience, I have seen a lot of people who have presented to me and they have a situation and they didn't need to be in that situation. So common mistakes, failing to meet the points threshold, as I mentioned before. Your points, your EOI and your points of your application must align. So that's a very, very important point. Providing inconsistent documentation. Immigration don't go to a great deal of effort to look at your experience, for example. So if you've put some sort of experience down somewhere, immigration may make a quick phone call to whoever that employer was, ask a couple of quick questions, It might have been 3 or 4 years ago that you left there. No one's heard of you anymore. They've moved on. The point of this conversation is that immigration, they don't go to a lot of effort sometimes. So in our document presentation, we often like to collect a number of different types of documents to prove your work. But definitely providing inconsistent documentation would be a reason for your application to reach some troubled waters. Insufficient evidence of funds. Yes, that's a very isolated and particular scenario for some types of visas. So particularly student visas, for example. Yeah, but yeah, some countries, yeah, you are required to prove your funds. They do vary, but it can be something that, yeah, if you haven't got enough evidence of that, your application can run into tricky water as well. Your wrong ANSCO selection, yes. Sometimes the qualification that you have, you may even be better off, having your ANSCO occupation in something that is it might maybe lower than what your actual experience is. But you've definitely got to have the right ANSCO application, your right ANSCO code to your qualification. There is just to use an example, sometimes your experience must be close. It can be what's termed closely aligned to a particular occupation. Immigration have very, very, very different views on that. So, we will work with you to secure your correct ANSCO application. Incomplete or outdated work references is another possibility where things could go wrong. Your work references, yes, they do need to be very, very thorough. It's something that myself and our team, we're constantly getting back to a client or an applicant and saying, look, this doesn't look right to us. And we have the view of, if it doesn't look right to us, it's not going to change when we submit it to the department. So nothing is going to change. So it's got to satisfy our team before we would submit your application. So yeah, outdated work references, if they're wrong, they're incorrect, there's no contact numbers on them, there's no letterheads. It's a peer, for example, that can be a problem. The reference should be from someone who's a superior, not just a peer. And yes, the good old using non-OMARA agents. You can always tell if you're in that area. That would be by the cost of the application. We have a very, I guess there's a known set of, I guess the pricing structure from registered agents is very, very similar and known. If you're suddenly paying a lot of money for an agent, over the top money, probably one of the first signals that something is not right. So definitely using a non-registered agent is definitely something that is fraught with danger. They are some of the common mistakes to avoid. There's probably maybe a few others there. Rushing your application, or not addressing the key criteria in any of your application. Sometimes they're very, very common, just really silly mistakes that could probably be avoided. So that's something that we would work very closely with you on. Next slide. I'm seeing some great questions here, by the way. Seeing some wonderful questions here. There's some great ones here. Nina and Nabram and Amara, you've got some really great questions. I'm trying to read them as well while I'm trying to read these. There's some very, very good questions there. So I look forward to dealing with those at the when we get to that exciting bit at the end there. What can lead to the visa rejections? Like as I mentioned earlier, I know it sounds a little bit hard to believe, really, but immigration will refuse your visa, and that is their first answer. What can lead to these rejections? Gaps in employment history, yes. Long periods of gaps, or maybe I've seen this sometimes where someone says they've worked for somewhere for 3 years, for example, but 18 months of those was on casual basis or part-time, for example. And when you're calculating your permanent hours versus your casual hours, it can be a real problem. So absolutely, gaps in employment history is something which could lead to your rejection. Inconsistent or unverifiable documents. The worst thing that you can do in the immigration landscape is provide a fraudulent document. So it's game over if something like that occurs. You'll be what's known as 40/20 banned, fraudulent document. So unfortunately, the department does see a lot of those, and they seemingly have a wonderful track record of tracking down those fraudulent documents. So inconsistent or unverifiable documents would be definitely one. Missing health or character check, yes. If it's a time of application matter, if it's a time of application requirement versus a time of decision requirement, if you haven't done your health check and done your police clearances before you've logged your application, yes, that could be an issue as well. Failure to prove your relationship validity, yes. Like I mentioned before, it's one fail, all fail. So if you don't have a lot of supporting documents with you and your partner, you and your spouse is intending to come with you, it can be something that we need to discuss. The remedy for that would be you do your visa first, and then you would supply at a later date your application for your partner, if there is any doubt. Low English proficiency, yes. You, like I have hit on before, English proficiency, the tests, it varies from 4.5 basic score to 8 superior. So that's the broad spectrum of satisfactory English under the migration landscape. So yes, if your occupation required a particular English score, or your visa application required a particular English score and you didn't have it, yes, that's something you can't defend that in the tribunals. You can go to a tribunal and defend something, but when you're trying to defend a black and white problem, there's no hope of success. If the score was X amount when it was applied for, and you have Y, there's nothing that can be done about that. Mismatch between claimed experience and ANSCO roles. Yes, that could be something as well. And it's something that I do a lot of on a regular basis, is communicate with the employer, for example, writing position descriptions or having a look at your resumes and making sure that they align directly with your ANSCO codes. So that might be something that I might mention as well before I might even forget. If you're doing your resume, have a bit of a look at whatever your ANSCO code is, and have a look at just what your position descriptions are and your tasks and duties, and just see if your letter of offer marries up very closely with what the ANSCO code actually is. So yeah, they are some of the things that can lead to the visa rejection. The mismatch in the points, unfavorable references, definitely some of the key areas there. Excellent. Okay, next slide. Yep. Okay. The GSM, General Skilled Migration, some classes. These are the broad ones here: the 189, the 190, the 491. They would be probably, yes, they are the most. What would I say? The most. What's the word I'm looking for? The most publicised ways, I guess you might say, of opportunities coming here into Australia. I would say that in reality, There are other options, and for different reasons, there would be other options that would be available as well. Employer-based visas would be probably one that would jump to mind as well. But just to in summary, yes, the 189 and the 190, they're both they're both permanent visas to come to Australia. The 189, often viewed by people, yes, as the golden egg, you might say. It's the one where you are free to do whatever you like, work wherever you like, no restrictions, you're not bound to your employer, you're not bound to a state. You can go and do whatever you like. Yes, that is true. In reality, the opportunities to come under these pathways, they do exist, and in the medical landscape, you've probably got the best chances, but they are capped, what's known as capped. So what that means is if there's 40,000 applications in the system and immigration's granting 2,000 visas this month, well, there's 2,000 visas coming out, and that's why that's what's known as the capping system. So if you fall out of that gene pool, for example, after 2 years, you've got to go back into it again. Correctly, the key points definitely are, yes, there's no sponsor required, the high points threshold. So if you have got superior English and you're in your 30s and you have managed, you've managed to get 80 points or 85 points or whatever, yes, you are definitely in the we want you basket. So you would probably get your invitation. And it is permanent
Darren,
residence.
I'm so sorry. Shall I I just want to interrupt for 1 second. People would have a question how 189 or 190 or 491 visas, if they are going for it, whether it is an easy transmission, whether they can come to Australia far better than employment sponsorship. It's an easy process. They will be migrating from any country, like if you take
Yeah.
Dubai or
Yeah.
India
Yeah.
or any country,
Yeah.
wherever they are.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yes.
what would be the benefit, if in sense of when choosing an employment PR, or apart from this, choosing 189 or 190, what
Yeah.
would you say? Is it better?
Yep. Okay. Hands down, without any question of a doubt, any employer-sponsored visas is likely to be quicker.
Okay.
The reality is they because they're capped, because these visas are capped, the reality is there's too many applications in the system for the actual visas that are ever going to be granted. And employer-sponsored visas do get preference
Okay.
over a lot of the 189s or the 190s. I would say, except in the instance where you've got someone that has a very high points, 80s, 85s, around that number in the medical profession, yes, you're giving yourself a very, very good chance. The reality is, I guess that's what we want to talk about, the reality and the likelihood of your success. If you're around the
Definitely. Yeah.
65 to 70 mark, the chances of you getting the actual invitation and to apply for your visa are based on a percentile average lower than what they would be on your employer sponsored visa.
Okay.
So, but there are definitely reasons as to why you can have multiple applications in. You can have your 189, your 189 in, or your 190 in, and also have your employment pathway undergoing as well. And I have weekly conversations in my office about somebody may want a particular visa over another. Okay, yes, the 189 is wonderful, but there's a low chance of actually getting that. I don't want a 482 visa. It's a temporary visa. Yes, I understand that, but your visa is going to be processed in 6 months, and then when you're here, you can do your permanent residency when you're here, direct entry, probably when you're here. So at least get here and do that. So there's like swings and roundabouts. There's almost like there's no one visa that has every box ticked from the
So you mean like
this.
Australian accessibility is easier than any other countries? Like you can jump with a 482 or 186 or
Yeah,
any visas.
yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
Exactly. Like once you have a 482, you can jump into 189 or 180,
Yeah,
190
yeah,
or 491 after
yeah,
reaching out to
yeah.
Australia as well.
That's right. And I mean, if you wanted my professional opinion, there's a lot of visas, but the 482 probably gives it's the lower. People don't want the 482 because it's a temporary visa, and I get that. But from the processing point of view, it's a wonderful visa, opening up a lot of opportunities for you further down the track. Your
It's like a
186,
foundation, isn't it, Darren? It's like a
yeah,
foundation.
yeah, that's right. You can do your
Exactly.
180, you can do your 189, you can do your 186 direct entry, stay for 2 years, and you can do your transition. Immigration will process. They're probably at the moment in this landscape at the moment, the visa that the department is actually processing at a reasonable time. They're
Okay.
actually looking at them and they're actually processing them at a reasonable time. But you know, people don't want the 482, they want the permanent residency, and I get that. And but
Yeah,
there's
definitely.
all that,
People just want to reach out.
that
So like
they don't, yeah, they don't want to pay twice. You pay for the 482, you got to pay for the 186 again, and it's expensive. I get it.
I got a question for Charles as well. Like if I may ask, like Charles, like once like as we are having recruitment opportunities, what would you say like getting a 482 visas for these people, or is it similar like for any healthcare professionals which we are
Yes.
dealing with?
Yeah. Be quite easy for doctors, nurses, allied health professionals as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I totally agree. Once you're on that pathway, the
Hmm.
door to permanent residency is going to open at some stage. That's a great thing. Next to the 482, I would say the 494 is the other one here. And I've got a couple of questions on the forum here. There's people going, I'm 45, what am I going to do? Or I'm turning 45 next week. The 494 would be your only opportunity, really, because once you get on that, you can transition into your permanent residency. But yeah, so yeah, the 189, the 190, they're all the sponsored visas from the state sponsored visas. And I don't know, we're opening up, I guess we're opening back up again. The next 6, 8, 9, 10, 12 months, the landscape for medical migration will get much busier than what it has been. So I would, to get your boots on the ground in the 482 landscape, I think that's a very smart and wise thing to do. Because you can
Brilliant.
set up your 189s in the system as well. Then the old 491. Look, the 491, to be honest, that's seen as there's the regional bodies here that they travel abroad and they do seminars and they tout the 491 as the gateway to come into Australia. And I might say the 491's great if it's a square peg and a square hole, or a round peg and a round hole. But if there's anything that's a bit outside of that perfect visa application, the 491 could have a little bit of some problems.
Okay.
But yes, it is the gateway to the pathway to your permanent residency as well. But it's promoted. I know that. What are they called? The regional bodies here in Australia. We have regional bodies, and they go overseas quite regularly. And these are the visas that they actually promote. But I actually spoke to one the other day, and they've done 8 visas since last year. 8. That's all they've done. 8,
Okay.
8 491 visas. That's all they've done. So
Okay.
I find that a very low number. I find that a very low number in the landscape of what migration actually really is. So
Okay. Good. All right. Should we go to the next slide, Darren?
yes, sorry, yes, I digress a little bit there.
Okay. So why
Right.
should you choose 360 Medicare for Australian migration is the key question here. So we've got a team of dedicated experts in Australian migration in 3 different locations that you can access. We've got a very strong background in healthcare, especially healthcare recruitment, as a result, healthcare migration. We've deployed over 6,000 healthcare professionals like yourself to various different locations, finding them jobs and also supporting with the immigration program. Our migration agents will assist you with the end-to-end documentation. Then you've got Darren who will guide us on the requirements of the Australian immigration system. And we work 100% compliant with the Australian immigration laws, and will give you clear and very concise ethical advice in terms of what the best pathway is for you, obviously with expert advice from professionals like Darren. And we also want to offer all of you a free eligibility check for your migration program, all of you who have joined today. Usually that comes at a cost, but we'll do it free of charge for all of the participants in this webinar today. Next slide, please, Mani. Okay, so 360 Medicare's Australian Migration Service in a very sort of structured diagram over here.
Like we do end-to-end service, right, Charles? Like we create each and every pools. Like we start from the beginning and we take care until they are onboarded to Australia, or we help them to migrate to any country which they desire. Yeah.
It's a pretty much a hand-holding process. We will support you all the way in terms of your skills assessment. We'll offer you a personalized pathway. No two people will get the same advice on immigration. Also, the healthcare licensing team will support you with the licensing requirements of Australia, for example. After registration is one that comes to mind. Interviews as well and documentation. Our teams will work very, very closely with you, practically guide you through the entire process, filling in the forms. Obviously, Darren's team will help you, and then state nomination support as well. It's a fully comprehensive service that we offer in terms of migration to Australia. Next slide,
Which
please.
they receive, like they get end-to-end services, like how they don't have to move from anywhere, like whether they want to check whether we are registered or whether we are an OMARA agent. Like everything is covered by 360 Medicare. That's what you like point out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Next slide, please.
Next slide.
Okay, so now we go to the questions and answers, which is the fun part. So are we going to take these ones on the chat, Austin, or are we going to get them to unmute
Let's
their
start with
microphone?
the chats. First of all, let's
Chats,
start with the
okay,
chat.
all right. Let's have a look. Darren, you might be able to take
Yeah,
some of these as
okay.
well.
Great. We'll answer some of these might be just general
Yeah,
answers at the moment. And look, sometimes I feel, I mean, one of the roles of an agent is you must be candid, frank, and honest in your assessment. That's one of the criteria in the framework of what we do. Being frank, candid, and honest. That is how an agent must address situations and matters. And sometimes I find that it's being frank with someone. They say, "Can I do this?" And I say, "No, you can't." And they go, "Why?" And I go, "Well, because you're 46 or whatever." And the consultation, the question is, it doesn't go for an hour. Like if someone comes to our office and has a consultation, it's not a time-based consultation process. It's a question-based consultation. I've had people drive me 6 hours to see me and ask me one question. And I answer that question frank, candid, and honestly, and to the truth, because if they lodge that visa, they're going to lose their money, the whole situation. So sometimes being frank and candid is sometimes it's difficult for the client to understand that sometimes. So I wanted to put that out there in case I say something that may be too frank when I'm talking about these people here. So Monica, yes, can everyone see these questions? Everyone can see
yes,
them?
I can. Yeah.
Yeah, Monica, I had a question. So, Monica, you're a nurse and you want to know about engineering candidate. I was thinking to myself, why you as a nurse want to know about engineering candidate? Engineering is probably one of the most complicated occupations that exist in the migration landscape. Engineering is a very, very complex field of entry into Australia. Engineers Australia is the assessing body. I'm not an engineer, but engineers can talk to engineers and they can know what they're talking about. So, Monica, your question here to know about an engineering candidate, and there are some things that are in these questions that I don't have information at the moment, like how old are you? What's your level of experience? How old is the level of experience? Those type of things may enable me to give you a more director assessment of the question that you've actually presented to me. But fundamentally speaking, Monica, if you're there and you can hear me okay, Engineers Australia is where you would have to get your initial qualification, your qualification. So I think if I've answered that one okay, please tell me if there was something that I haven't answered correctly in your assessment there. I don't know how old this person is as the engineer, for example. I don't know the level of experience, what their points tested may be. If you're thinking about a state-sponsored or a 189 or a 190. So, Monica, definitely the first step would be to jump into Engineers Australia and follow their directive about how to get your qualification assessed. But I have done a few engineers before, and I can recall from memory that they are rather complex and near the top of the tree for complexity in dealing with an organisation here from Australia. So Engineers Australia, it would be the first starting point.
The next one is the 50-year-old nurse. I think that's
And there's a
American.
cardiologist there, the Egyptian cardiologist, Amar. If I say your name correctly, please forgive me if I have not said your name correctly. Yes, so Amar, you probably got a bit of a situation from the point of view of, yes, you're a cardiologist. Should you do the Australian equivalent first in order to complete? An Egyptian degree is not fully comparable, so you won't get your cardiologist. So the thing that I would look at here, first of all, Emma, is look at your experience, and just to get my head around exactly what's required for the cardiologist, I'm presuming you're talking about the 189 or the 190. And as I mentioned before, the 482 can be a very softer assessment as well. So whilst you may have trouble with your 180 or your 190, and you may considering the 482 pathway, for example, because you may be surprised that your qualifications and experience may actually align up a little bit softer than what they would with the general skilled migration. Remembering what I said a moment ago, the 491's a great visa if it's a square peg and a square hole. Here we have a situation where that's kind of the example. This is not square peg, square hole sort of stuff here. This is a qualification from a country. You've got to make it align to the situation or the ANZ code that we have presented before us here. So although your degree may not be registered or acknowledged, I think if this situation was presented to me, I'd be curious to understand how close are you to getting into the 482 visa? Would you consider that? And that would be probably the best advice to get you in that first leg in the door. Because as you've correctly identified, you probably are going to have troubles with your Egyptian qualification. However, I don't see it as a real deal breaker. I just think there might be a better option for a visa for you to consider. Marilyn, yeah, 50. It's a shame. I'm over 50 and I don't think I'm still pretty useful in the workforce. So yeah, but 45, there's if you're in the high salary threshold, there is a way around that. 185,000 off the top of my head per year. is the high salary threshold. So if you can find an employer that wants to sponsor you for a 186 visa, direct entry, and pay you $200,000 a year, sight unseen, you can have a visa. That's the only way. So that's the only way. There is the high salary threshold that you must have in order to qualify for your permanent residency. So you must be paid that salary for 2 years, satisfy the high salary threshold, and then you can bounce into the 186. It's going to be a tough ask to get that done. So that is the candid response to that one. So when you say, are you eligible? You're not eligible for your 189 or your 190 or your 186 directly, but there would be a pathway. Is it a realistic pathway? I don't know. I'd question that, but there is a pathway. And that's what immigration do. They say, oh, we haven't shut the door on everybody. There is a pathway. Yes, there is a pathway, but it's a very, very, it may not be a possible pathway, but yes, there is a pathway, but in reality, it's going to be very, very tough ask.
Should we go to the next one down?
Yeah, Naban, 47, 2 years diploma in computing and business after high school, experience in IT, project manager, e-commerce. What options available for me? Is the 482 without age? Yes, the 482 has no age limit. You can be 80 and be on a 482. There's no age limit for the 482. Being 47, you're over the 45 bracket. All general skill migration has a cutoff at 45. That is not looking to be changed anytime soon. So again, similar to the scenario where I just had with the other one, where the high salary threshold, that would be probably the only way. So if you can convince someone in Australia to pay you 185,000 for 2 years and then go into your 186, yes, there's a pathway for you, but not any other way.
Okay.
45, Nina. I'm 45 this month, have APRA, I'm British citizen, currently working in the UK as a nurse. Any pathway to PR? Again, over 45 just cuts everybody out for the general skilled migration. So again, very similar to the other ones. In this situation, I would ask, how old is your husband, for example? This Nina's husband may be a cook, for example, and he may be 40, for example. So maybe Nina is not the main applicant. Maybe there's a husband in the background or whatever else. Maybe has another qualification that may actually be suitable. So that might be the other question that we have. But definitely, so no. The police clearances are interesting. Police clearances depend on the country of where they were issued from to how long they last for. Some last for 3 months, some last for 12 months. So it depends on the country of where it's from. And not only that, if you lodge your visa and you lodge your police clearance, and then you go back to that home country, you are required to provide another police clearance, even though your current one may be still valid. Because immigration thinks you went back and robbed a bank when you went back home. So that's what they think. So every time you revisit where that police certificate was from, you would need to supply another one. So your police clearance, but it's from the country of origin. Some are 3 months, some are 12 months. So I'm not sure, Rachel, where yours would be from.
Darren, I've got a more generic question for you. So,
Yeah.
all these people who are here today, all the participants, why should they choose to go to Australia? Why would they? What's so special about Australia? You as an Australian citizen or
Yeah.
not Indian
Okay.
person?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. Very, very good question. I think Australia, from the feedback that I get, there's opportunities in Australia, I would say, that are probably gone for other parts of the world. I've been to the UK. I've lived in the UK. I've
Yeah.
lived in France. I understand the landscape of the UK. Charles, you might agree. You might say this that from what I have experienced, it's very, very difficult in the UK landscape
Correct.
to get out of some sort of where you are and then to go into another business and to become a business person or whatever. I might
Yeah.
say, would you agree,
Opportunities.
Charles,
Yeah.
with that?
Yeah.
The
We
opportunities are
lack
very
that.
limited. I've seen that. Australia's not like that. Australia, if you've got a great idea and if you've got half an idea to make something of yourself, there is opportunities everywhere. I think Australia is probably 15, where the UK was maybe 20 years ago,
Yeah.
from the point of view of progression for your betterment of your life. I think those opportunities are present in Australia. So I see
Yeah.
lots of people that come to Australia, cooks, for example, and then they open up their own restaurants, all that sort of stuff. When someone's a professional, there's opportunities to grow whatever landscape you're in your professional landscape. So I would say, fast forward yourself 5 years, the
Yeah.
opportunity to become a better lifestyle for you and your family, I think
Yeah.
it does
Yeah.
exist. That's one thing. The thing that I don't know what the rest of
I have a question for you, both of you. Like, what to say? Like, let's say from UK perspective and Australian perspective. Like, Charles was previously was in Australia.
yeah,
So let's say 10 years back and now, and the opportunities for each and every professionals whoever joined in our webinar are like mostly healthcare, and
yeah,
some are for general skill migration, like engineers who wants to try for Australia.
yeah.
So, what would your both perspective would be? Like, I'll start with Charles and I'll end up with Darren. What do you say, Charles? Like, how it
Okay.
is?
So I being a human resource stroke recruitment professional 10 years ago, I worked in Australia. I was there
Okay.
for about 2 years. There's a huge difference between the lifestyle here in the UK and Australia. Unfortunately, I had to head back home, back to the UK due to some personal circumstances, family, etc. However, the lifestyle as a whole, in comparison to Europe, is a lot more relaxed, laid back. Obviously, you do have to work hard, like any sort of European destination, but you've got a lot of time for your family, to have a lot of sort of relaxation. There's a lot of nature in Australia. The weather, especially, was a lot better than the UK. That was sort of my perspective living in Australia, in Sydney
So,
in
would you
particular.
choose Australia over UK? That's what I would ask.
Obviously, I would, but obviously it's too late for me. I'm over the age of 45, Darren, unless
Yeah,
you
no,
can
I
do
get
something
it.
for me.
So,
I
Darren, you
tot-
should process this PR then.
I totally get it. I am hearing a lot about Perth, for example. Perth is on the other side of the world compared to where I live, and but
Yeah,
the salaries that I hear that are in Perth, the beaches, the lifestyle, all that sort of stuff, property to buy property in Perth, very, very cheap. A house in Perth. Um, a very nice house in Perth would be a couple of $100,000, for example, four, 500,000, $600,000. That same house, in maybe in Sydney will be 2 million, for example, or whatever.
well,
So you can get a nicer house, a nicer lifestyle. That's what I see, and that's what I hear, particularly outside of the capital cities. Sydney's expensive to live, Melbourne's
it was,
expensive to
yeah.
live, very
Yeah.
the Gold Coast and all that sort of stuff. But outside of that, you can live in a very nice part of the world for a salary that's probably very, very reasonable, definitely in your
For each
lifestyle.
and every professional you're talking about, right? Like,
For each and
even if
every
you help.
professional, yeah, I think the salaries are very, very good in Australia, particularly for the medical industry. Very,
Yeah.
very, very, very above average. Very above average. I would suggest. So,
Yeah, yeah. In
um,
comparison, because yeah, if you look at the UK salaries for doctors and nurses down, the salaries are a lot better comparatively.
yeah, they are. They are. I'm not saying everything is champagne and chocolates over here, but I'm
No, yeah.
saying that there's opportunities for you to grow, and I see that a lot. I see people. I've met people that have come here as refugees, for example. Have come here on a protection visa,
Yeah,
and they've been come from another country where there's war and who knows whatever else, and they come here. 3 years later, 4 years later, they're buying a house and they've got a car and
It's
They've got
brilliant.
all this sort of stuff. So they've managed to save $40,000 in since they've been here,
Yeah.
and put towards a deposit of a house, for example. And that's just, if someone with no real opportunity to make a lot of money can do something like that, someone that does has a
Yeah.
great opportunity. I think that's what I would see
Yeah, in
as
the
one.
UK, you could not do that, Darren,
No, I
especially
don't believe so. Yeah, I've heard that many times, and it's
impossible. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. It's very few countries I'd say where if you want to have a go, yeah, there's definitely opportunities there, definitely.
And that's
Um,
the other part, like most of the countries have stopped recruitment. Like you have the opportunities, most of the opportunities for each and every professionals are awaiting in Australia. So you have opportunities, definitely. The doors are open
yeah,
always.
look, and I drive home. I drive home when I'm driving home. Every new building that I'm seeing going up around the place here is a medical facility, medical facility. They're everywhere, on every corner, on every. If I drive home, I must pass by 10 of them on the way home, and I'm in a fairly small place. So there's all these healthcare professionals, that's what seems to be happening. We're living longer, and everyone wants another, all the medical sort of stuff
Everyone's
that
trying.
everyone that exists now. We're living longer, and so that means aged care professionals and all that sort of stuff. It's just a growing area of life moving
Yeah,
forward.
yeah, and I think just moving on to the radiographers that we discussed, a few days ago, Darren. I think there's a radiographer here, 42 years old, wanting to migrate to Australia. There's so much opportunity for radiographers as well, isn't there?
Definitely, yeah, definitely in that age group too, in that early 40s,
Yeah.
late 30s, you're in your professional thing. How are we going for time, by the way? Are we still okay to talk Q&As? Are we still
I think we need to finish off in the next couple of minutes because we've gone
all
over
right?
the hour.
Yeah, no, sorry about that, everybody. I've got some other questions here. Is there a way that these questions can be emailed to
Yeah,
me?
yeah.
In
Our
Yeah.
IT team will sort of copy all those
Yeah,
questions for
so
you and send it out to you.
apologies. Apologies. There's probably some there that I'm happy to get back to you. I'm happy to talk. I'm happy to offer that to you as well. So, um,
Sure.
yeah. So as you've said, yeah, we've probably easy to talk about. I think we've only talked about general stuff though. I think here tonight we haven't really gone too far into personal stuff, like isolated stuff. I think we've covered very generic stuff. Hopefully it's been informative.
Yeah,
So for
and
those,
obviously, yeah, with these questions as well, Darren, they can contact us directly. Our
sure.
team will deal with them and then pass them on to you
Yeah, sure,
on a
sure,
case-to-case basis.
sure. Yeah.
I think that
No,
would be the way forward. Obviously, you've given them a broad overview of the immigration process. We've talked about the advantages, the various different visa
yeah,
types,
yeah,
and your preference for certain professions.
definitely.
And
Yes, yes.
yeah, and I think we've got a lot of different types of professionals in this webinar
You
today,
have,
talking
you
from
have,
healthcare professionals, engineers,
you definitely have.
um,
Yes, you
doctors,
have,
etc.
you have.
So I think that the best way forward would be to contact our team to initiate the process, um, and then our team will be able to guide you individually on a case-by-case basis, forward your details onto Darren, and he can give you a more in-depth some analysis of your particular case,
Consultations, like we can move forward.
and a consultation as well. Obviously, at the beginning of this webinar, we said we're going to offer free consultations for all of you. So I would take advantage of that and engage with our friendly team.
Definitely.
And then hopefully we'll connect you to Darren, then he can get more involved in your individual cases.
Yep. I guess in conclusion, and something I just thought of something then, getting good advice in our industry, unfortunately, it's not as easy as it should be.
Yeah,
So getting correct advice, there's lots of forums that people belong to. You can ring up the department, you can ask them, you can do your Google research. But I think like we're looking at some of these questions here, getting good advice, it's just getting harder and harder.
yeah,
Um, and like not, I mean, we don't think too much about it, but our registration at 05 means I was registered in 05, and I don't think there's a lot of agents, to be honest, that actually have, I don't think that have that depth of experience, I guess. So, um,
definitely.
getting good experience, getting good advice, honestly, it really is a challenge. It shouldn't be as hard. So I'm happy to answer these questions with you and for you. So
Brilliant. Okay, so let's sort of wrap it up. Thank you all for attending this webinar, and thank you, Darren, especially for all the valuable experience and insight you've given us and all the participants today. And hopefully we'll have many more of these in the future. Thank you all, and wish you all a good evening. And to you, Darren.
okay, thank you very much. Yep, goodbye everybody, and see you again.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Okay,
Bye.
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 Thank you.